All right, welcome to The Explainer. We hear a lot about tariffs, but forget all that for a second. There's a much quieter, way more important war being waged, and it's against the US dollar. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this secret financial system China has been building. And trust me, it's already starting to hit the US Treasury and, yeah, even your wallet.
So where did this all begin? Well, it wasn't with some big, flashy announcement. Nope. It started in a quiet room, in a meeting in Paris that almost nobody noticed. And in that room, China's top negotiator gave a pretty stark warning to the U.S. Treasury Secretary. And that warning, it basically set the stage for everything we're about to talk about. The message was, well, crystal clear. China was basically saying, hey, those old rules, the ones where you use economic pressure on us, yeah, they don't apply anymore. You see, for years, they've been quietly building this escape hatch, a way to get around America's financial power. And this meeting, this was them telling us they're finally ready to open it. So what's the real weapon here? It's not some new gadget or another boring trade fight. It's an entirely new financial system. And in this explainer, we're going to break it all down for you. What it is, how it works, and most importantly, what it means for the money in your pocket. Okay, so let's go back to that room in Paris for a second. The warning was simple. If these U.S. trade investigations keep up, there were going to be big consequences. And you know what? This wasn't a bluff. It was pure confidence because they knew they had these new financial tools in their back pocket. All right, so to really get what this new weapon is, we first got to look at the defensive side of things, how China is protecting its own cash. They've been watching what's happened to other countries, and they're taking some pretty huge steps to basically sanction-proof their wealth from any U.S. pressure.
Okay, so you've probably seen the headlines, right? China is dumping all its U.S. debt. But the real story is, well, it's a lot more clever than that. They're not just selling it off, they're strategically moving it, kind of like a financial magic trick, shifting it into the shadows where it's way harder for the US to see what's going on, let alone control it.
And I mean, just look at the scale of this thing. It's staggering. Their official holdings, the ones we can see, have dropped from over $1 trillion all the way down to levels we haven't seen since the 2008 crisis. But here's the kicker. A massive chunk of that cash didn't just vanish. It just moved. It's got a new address now.
So why are they doing this? It all comes down to one big idea: sanction-proofing. It's pretty simple, really. They saw the U.S. freeze Russia's reserves back in 2022 and basically said, no way, that's not happening to us. So by moving these assets around, they're making sure their money can't just be frozen with one phone call from Washington. Okay, so hiding all that debt, that's just defense. Now let's talk about the offense. This is the really interesting part. They are building a completely new parallel financial system for the future. And this is where the real power play begins. It's called Mbridge, and you're going to want to remember that name. Think of it like a parallel financial universe. It's a digital platform where countries can trade directly with each other, using their own digital currencies. The whole point? To completely bypass the US dollar and the entire American banking system. Just cut it out of the equation.
And this is the absolute game changer. For decades, if you wanted to do international trade, you were pretty much forced to use US dollars. It was like the only highway available. Well, Mbridge is like building a whole new superhighway. All of a sudden, two countries can trade directly with, say, the digital yuan, and boof, in that single transaction, the need for the US dollar just disappears. Now, don't think this is just some small experiment on the side. This is a huge deal. I mean, even Saudi Arabia, the country that has been the anchor of the Petrodollar system for half a century, has just joined Mbridge. They're already starting to use this new system for oil sales. That is a massive signal. Okay, so I know this all sounds like big, global, financial stuff, kind of abstract, right? But believe me, this shift has a very, very direct impact on your life. We're talking your budget, your monthly bills. Let's break down exactly how this hits your wallet.
All right, here's the number you need to know. $11 trillion. That's how much the U.S. government needs to borrow just this year. It's a staggering amount. And for decades, how did we do it? We relied on countries like China to lend us that money by buying our debt, U.S. Treasury bonds. But here's the problem. As China and other big countries start using their new system, Mbridge, they just don't need to buy our debt anymore. Think of it like an auction. What happens when your biggest, richest buyers just get up and walk out of the room?
Well, suddenly the seller, in this case the US, has a really big problem.
It's basic economics, right? Supply and demand. If you have fewer buyers for your product, you have to sweeten the deal to attract the ones that are left. For US debt, that better deal means offering a higher interest rate. And guess what? That extra cost doesn't just stay in DC.
Nope. That cost lands right on your kitchen table. Why? Because the interest rate for almost everything, your mortgage, your car loan, a small business loan, it's all tied to the interest rate on US debt. So when the government has to pay more to borrow, you have to pay more to borrow. It's that direct.
Okay, let's zoom out for a minute, because this isn't just a China story. What we're seeing is a much bigger global pivot. Central banks all over the world are starting to fundamentally question what safe money even looks like anymore. And you can see the timeline here, it really sped up. 2022, the US freezes Russia's money. Boom, that sent a shockwave. By 2024, central banks were gobbling up gold at the fastest rate in over 50 years. And now, the forecast for 2026, gold could actually surpass US Treasuries as the world's #1 reserve asset. That's a huge shift.
You see, China is playing the long game. They're being the tortoise to the US hare. Their bet is that America can't just react its way out of a slow, deliberate 10-year strategic shift. And remember, this is just as much about protecting themselves from a financial system they don't trust anymore as it is about actively trying to challenge it.
So what's the bottom line here? What should you be watching for as this whole thing unfolds?
Okay, here's your new framework. First, stop calling this a trade war. It's not about soybeans and microchips anymore. This is a financial system realignment, a big one. And the one number you absolutely need to watch is the 10-year Treasury yield. If that number stays high, that is your signal that the cost of money and, by extension, the cost of pretty much everything is going up in America.
And that leaves us with the big question. By building this whole parallel system, is China actually holding all the cards now? Or is this a massive gamble that could completely backfire on them? Honestly, nobody knows for sure. But